Of course, there is no convicted felon like Trump. He's one of a kind. So all I can speak to is how it goes for the average Joe. And what happens is that they are asked to come into the probation office, which in this case is at 100 Center Street in Manhattan, and sit in a small city office, meet with a civil service probation officer, and discuss everything from the crime that they are convicted of, any criminal history they may have, their family situation, their obligations, where they're living, how they're supporting themselves, their income.
So unlike any other convicted felon in New York City, Donald Trump will not have to go into 100 Center Street, and he will have his lawyer, Todd Blanche, sitting next to him for his pre-sentencing meeting with the probation officer happening today. Trump will reportedly call in for the interview from the comfort of his own home at Mar-a-Lago, the site of where he's accused of mishandling classified documents. But like any other convicted felon in New York City, Trump will have to answer truthfully and with his own fate in the balance after 4 years in prison at stake. Joining our conversation, former SDNY Criminal Division Deputy Chief, MSNBC legal analyst Christy Greenberg joins us. Vaughn, Claire, and Stuart Stevens are all back with us. Take me inside how this is likely to go on the official side. You know, will any of the sort of sails be trimmed in terms of the questions asked and the kind of answers pursued?
So I think they'll cover the normal topics that they would cover: your background, your medical history, mental health, financials, which should be an interesting part of the report. And then they'll ask questions about the offense conduct. It'll be interesting to see whether he really engages and how much he speaks to that, if at all, because he's not, obviously he's disputing and the facts that came out of the trial and is claiming he's innocent. But it does make sense to me. I'm not surprised at all that Todd Blanche is participating in this. I mean, you saw what happens when there's no teleprompter. He will go off the rails. And so wanting to make sure his client doesn't get himself into any deeper legal jeopardy, he's there to make sure that he stays on message, which their attempt in this interview is really try and paint the most, glowing picture you can of the former president and why this probation officer should not recommend a sentence of jail. And so that is their objective here. Whether they will be successful remains to be seen.
When you're convicted of a crime, how does it work if you're not remorseful for committing the crime and sorry to the victims of the crime?
Yeah, so, I mean, most defendants that go to trial and are maintaining that they're innocent are unlikely to show remorse. And that doesn't necessarily count against you, but you certainly can get credit if you plead guilty and do accept responsibility. But I don't expect the judge will say, this is somebody who exercised his right to a trial and is still maintaining his innocence, and I'm going to hold that against him. But he has plenty of other things to hold against him, right? 10 gag order violations. Gag order violations since the verdict. You have gag order violations from the last trial where he was attacking the law clerk. Mm-hmm. So one of the things the probation officer has to look at is this somebody who's amenable to supervision? Is this somebody who will follow the rules? He is plainly not. And so that is one of the many reasons I think this probation officer should be recommending a jail sentence.
What does the probation officer and then the judge do about someone whose position on the prosecutor is that Alvin Bragg should go to jail?
Right. I mean, how do you say that this is somebody who's going to have respect for the law? That one of the things you're trying to do with any sentence is promote respect for the law. He has none. As Claire McCaskill said brilliantly, just a few seconds ago, he's somebody who's saying screw you to all the institutions, including the rule of law. So I don't see how this is somebody that you can say is going to follow a probation officer's words. He doesn't follow the court orders. He has thumbed his nose at the system in every which way. So again, one more reason why there should be a jail sentence here.
What about the idea that they're likely to argue that his service to the country as his president, his crime was committed in the Oval?
Yeah. That's an aggravating. They're going to argue it's a mitigating factor, right? Look at his service to this country, which is laughable considering he's talking about, I don't care about my own voters at a rally. Like, the only person whose interests Donald Trump cares about are his own. He doesn't care about anybody else. But I think that it is an aggravating factor that he is signing the checks, those falsified business records from the Oval Office. That makes it a more serious offense, not less of one. And I think the fact that they're going to argue, look, he's potentially the future presidents of the United States. And so really you would destabilize this country if you put him in jail. That is an argument you've heard a lot of people making. But it is far more stabilizing if the American presidency becomes a get-out-of-jail-free card, and you can have somebody who does not accept responsibility and who is thumbing their nose at our democratic institutions just say, okay, well, I'm president, so I don't get jail time. That cannot be how it works.
That is how it has worked for Trump so far. I mean, that everyone that investigated him had they didn't just get the disrespect that he's shown Bragg and Rashawn, Andy McCabe, Pete Strzok, Jim. I mean, what they did, and we covered them all for their individual narratives, but what they did in Trump's view was they dared to investigate his 2016 campaign's ties to Russia. He is never, ever able to acknowledge a mistake.
I don't think you ever hear the words "I'm sorry" or "regret," and I don't think that Donald Trump even, when we talk about the January 6th Select Committee, you also have not only the chance to say that I made a mistake, or he just doesn't even ignore it. Just last week, he called for the indictment of each of the members of Congress who were on the January 6th Select Committee.
Adam Kinzinger.
Right. I mean, that is still the committee ended its work, a year and a half ago, and yet that is still clearly at the forefront of his mind for reasons I don't know at any given moment why it is at the forefront of his mind. But Donald Trump has called for the jailing of Alvin Bragg, citizen's arrest of Judge Engoron, of Letitia James, the New York Attorney General. I mean, you've got to go into the archives, but he's pretty much called for the arrest of most of his, not political enemies, perceived political enemies, and those who have investigated him or dared to question whether he committed unlawful acts.